the background to this hangout is very interesting. Over to Imogen to explain.
Oh, okay. So I don't remember doing an Enneagram thing. That's funny. I did not know that I had done that before. But I don't. I had a traumatic brain injury, and I have some very serious memory issues. Clearly, and I don't remember. See, I would have just said I don't know, but now I have to say remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember my type, and actually I'm not really even sure what Enneagram is about, and I have a very very hard time learning completely new things. Like if I knew the jargon before my brain injury, then I can learn it better now. But at this point, I have to see people
Right.
talking about a thing to learn it.
Well, I'm also thinking, how are you? Because there's a chance with having. I've been reading the Improving Your Memory book for Dummies.
Yes,
I think you've ordered it.
I did. Yeah.
It's excellent because the guy who's written it is like he was like a baby boomer and he had like 30 years experience when he wrote the book in 2002. The other next book to get is Cognitive Psychology for Dummies. You've got 6 parts. You've got 4 really interesting parts for somebody interested in functions. You've got perception, memory, linguistics, reasoning. 4 really interesting parts for anybody interested in cognitive functions, and then they can go through each part and try and line it up with functions to sort of like show the limits of functions and then where functions are an advantage. But getting back on track, so what he talks about is for short-term memory to go into long-term memory.
Yeah.
It's about focus, about attention. So maybe some things with meditation might help with attention.
Not for me. I'm really, this is something I have a lot of experience now with
Right.
my own. I just have brain damage. It's not.
Right.
You can't just fix that.
Right. Okay. So the other route is, as you said, if you've got prior experience of something, is finding as many possible connections to the thing you're learning as your now. I do this a lot when I learn stuff, and NPs do this a lot. And so what I'm thinking of, Jonathan, maybe if you give a lot of examples of people that Imogen might know, that makes it more solid. Would that, if any particular celebrities
You could try.
Right.
Try.
You could try. I might not know them. I don't.
Right.
Follow.
Yeah. Well, if you just like say Enneagram 8, John Wayne.
So you know that I am an my type is ISFP.
Yes.
Is it typical to have a certain Enneagram type with that MBTI type?
Yes. They're usually type 4s, type 6s, or type 9s. So there's different types of variations of ISFP would be that.
Okay.
Each, it's not the same as Myers-Briggs. It's like a complementary system. That's the main thing.
And does it describe like instincts and drives? Like MBTI is cognitive preferences.
Yeah.
Mostly. So is Enneagram like the more emotional?
Kind
instinctual?
of.
Okay.
Yeah. The instincts are slight. The instincts are an extra part of the Enneagram. That's the own thing. But Enneagram's about defense mechanisms, about motivations, about fears, all those things.
Oh.
So yeah.
So how do you figure that out? How do you know what your type is?
So I mean, when I first when I started, I thought this graphic was excellent. So, is this useful to you, Imogen? I'll try and make it bigger by.
I mean, this is really big. I mean, maybe we should show her what an Enneagram actually is, what it actually looks like, the symbol.
Yeah, but that's for NJs, Jonathan, the actual symbol. But yeah, I'll put it on in a moment. But I like this one. I really liked this when I first started.
Values.
I'll go in a little bit.
So how you're supposed to figure out which of those is more important to you?
Yeah.
No, well, not exactly. No,
Oh.
Well, I thought it was like that. I mean,
you're not supposed to guess. That's like this is what is more important to you, whether you guess it or not. That's the thing. Your type would be something that you've always been. So these are more descriptions. These are just. This is a really basic guide.
I think I've got a wheel. I think I've got some wheels in here. Jonathan, okay. Jonathan seems to like this brown graphic, so I can go. I can go back and forth between. Do you want to explain about the centers, Jonathan?
Okay. So, as you can see, Ben keeps changing it when I just start talking. So there are 9 Enneagram types, and they are organized into 3 centers. So types 8, 9, and 1 are part of the gut center, and as it says there, that's about. It's not really about intuition. Actually, it's more about instinct. It's more about convictions and how you deal with anger and keeping the world at a distance and stuff. 2, 3, and 4 are the image center, which is also called the heart center. That's to do with like feelings of shame, how you manage shame and stuff. It's also about the kind of image you want to present to the world, whether that's of a kind and charitable person, or of a successful and efficient person, or a special and unique person. So if you're one of those types, then you'd be very neurotically focused on the kind of image you presented. And types 5, 6, and 7 are the head center, so that's part of like that's to do with anxiety and analysis and thinking about things and so on. So everyone has a core type, but there is also something called tri-type, which is that you have a type at each center. So, for example, my Enneagram type is type 1, and my tri-type is 1, 5, 2. That's my preference each center. So I am a type 1, my core type is 1, but because I'm a 1, 5, 2, I may be a bit different from another type 1 that might be a 1, 6, 3 or a 1, 7, 4, whatever. Okay.
So if I just read these, I really find all of it.
Well, these are just really basic graphics, of course. Like to do it properly, you'd be going through coaches, or you'd be talking to coaches for hours, or maybe you'd be researching the books. But yeah, so this helps to explain why people of the same Myers-Briggs type can have sometimes very different personalities in other ways.
Yeah. Well, I noticed with the personality pages, I don't use them anymore, but I noticed from that there seem to be like 3 distinct groups of ISFPs. And I don't know if that's true, but I just noticed that there's, like, I'm more of the assertive type, where it doesn't bother me. Like there are people who stay back and will just do whatever they can to stop any kind of disagreement or conflict. And they're like really emotional types that get really hurt by things that are not intended to be hurtful. But I'm kind of a thick skin kind of person. But I never know if it's just like, I had a very traumatic upbringing, and I don't know if like a lot of the ways that I deal with things in life come from that. Like I was in a very hard school in my family.
Well, by the way, Ben, we could have heard you typing. Just saying.
Yeah.
Just saying.
I mean, my father is ISTP, and he is very, he's the really like hard-nosed kind of ISTP where he did not hold back. And so I had to learn from a very early age to just, suck it up and take it. And that's what I did. So now I don't, it doesn't frighten me if somebody is really assertive or even aggressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's all consistent with type 9, which is what we...
Oh, okay.
But if you read the literature, some of the older stuff will say that your upbringing creates your type. However, that's not really agreed with anymore. Most Enneagram teachers think your type is something you're born with, and our childhoods. Well, our childhood will affect your personality, but they'll be filled with things that we fixate on because of our personality already. So if you remember things like that, that's because you focused. You notice that a lot because of your type, because your type is a type that tends to like suck it up and endure and be very stubborn. So yeah, whereas another type may have, if your Enneagram type was different, you might have dealt with all that stuff differently. It's not necessarily, you're not necessarily the way you are because your father was like that, but rather your father was like that, therefore this is how you dealt with it.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, I can see how the 9 and 1, that's the to be at peace and to be right, those two. I can see those being pretty much at the top. I mean, the other ones are important to me. That's the thing; they're all important to me. I don't know how you would decide.
Well, that's another thing with Type 9. Type 9 kind of has a tendency to relate to all the different types because Type 9's, the way Type 9 works is they're what's called an adaptive type. So they adapt themselves to other people. They try and accommodate or model themselves and other people, and specifically they're looking for peace. They're looking for their own sense of inner peace and their peace with others. There'll be certain things they can be very stubborn about, but generally that's what they're looking for.
Yeah. There's a quote by Leonard Cohen that is just, for me, it just burned into my brain. And he said something about, I can't say the quotation exactly, but something about, there is no one so virtuous and no one so depraved that I can't find that in myself, and I am that person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly it for me. Like, there is nothing that I can't relate to in some way.
There's a good book of Leonard Cohen's lyrics on Amazon. There you go.
Oh, I probably have it. I have his poetry books anyway. I don't know, but yeah, that even really, really awful stuff that I would never, ever allow in myself or in my life, I can understand it. Like, people ask, why are people so evil? Like, there are people who do really, really awful things that I find completely repulsive, and I would never allow it. But like in my own life. But I understand what they're doing. I understand that they're sort of going for negative bliss. It's like the other extreme. And it, like people who just, do terrible things to children or whatever, like, I think they should be executed, but I understand why they're doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's...
Like, if I'm being totally honest, I realize people will think that probably there's something wrong with me, but actually, there isn't a person that I can't understand.
Funnily enough, Type 9 is considered one of the most common types. So it's not actually a particularly rare thing to think like that necessarily. The most common type is considered Type 6, which is the opposite thing, but Type 9 is like second. So yeah, the world is filled with Imogens.
Really?
Yeah, whether that makes you feel special or not, I don't know. Obviously, as I said, there's variations with regard to tri-type and stuff, and there's also the thing with Type 9 is they often don't talk about themselves that much, so it might be they might not realize just how much there are people like them in the world. Just because they don't talk about themselves that much, they're focused on accommodating others and kind of tuning out discomfort.
Yeah. Wow. So I'm doing a thing right now where I'm trying to learn more about complex post-traumatic stress, because it is something that I can really see I'm dealing with in myself. And as I'm reading this, I'm just looking around. Of course, it's really hard to actually turn it back toward myself, because all I see, I'm reading this, I'm learning it, and I can see that's this person, I know why that person does this now, and just I can look around and see how everyone else is dealing with some part of this issue, and it's much harder for me to see it in myself.
Mm-hmm.
Or not necessarily to see it, I recognize myself in it, but just to use it in any practical way, I guess. Like I could see, like in a friend, I could say, maybe this is because of this, and you could probably do this, and it would help. But for myself, it's like I just feel like I've just got hit with some kind of a grenade, and I have shrapnel, and it's just getting into everything.
Yeah. Well, with type 9, they're often attracted to quite strong personalities or relative personalities, basically personalities that get them motivated and get them to do stuff that they go along with. So that's their.
That sounds like the INFJ 9.
No, all 9s can be like that.
Oh, right. Yeah, they can be, but
obviously the INFJ 9 will do that because the INFJ 9 is a 9. But
yeah, but no, it's the suggestive, the hot for the extroverted sensing ESTP.
Well, it's not necessarily extroverted sensing. It's like,
yeah, but you know what I mean. It's like when you look at some of the profiles.
I said what I meant was they could add to Ace, but also like 6s or 4s, whatever. Those are also a very strong reactive things. There's basically, or sometimes 1s even, people who get them. People make them feel strong emotions and get them moving in a certain direction.
Right, this might help, Imogen. I don't know how accurate it is. Jonathan will disabuse as if it is.
Yeah. By the way, that symbol in the center, that's what an Enneagram actually is. An Enneagram is a circle with 9 points all joined together. So kind of like a hexagram would be 6 or 5 or 7, whatever, or a pentagram would be 5. Or if you know what a pentagram is, if you know what a hexagram is, Enneagram means 9. I clearly can't remember the exact numbers, but whatever.
I'm just going to add some things to this folder. I'm going to add some of those things. Because you know about Jungian type, Imogen, a way of doing it might be to split them up. So, for instance, to say something like as Jonathan said there, ISFPs tend to be 9s, 4s, and something else. And
6.
then 9s, 4s, and then you can sort of split it up because you already have ISFP information in your head, and then you're sort of splitting it into 3 things for that, rather than splitting it into 9 things. And so you can sort of branch it off that, and that might be the best way for you, because as you said before, you can then think of certain ISFP resemblers,
Right. So I have I've realized just in the last maybe half year, and really I've had to grow back into my personality after my brain injury, because I had my brain injury and then I had strokes, and I've basically just had to rebuild a whole personality. And it's not really an active thing. It's just a slow realization. But one of the things that I know about myself is that I have, I don't follow the 9 thing in this. I have a very hard time relaxing or being still. Like just sitting and doing nothing is very difficult. I'm very active and I'm very motivated. I'm doing things all day. I have to do stuff all the time. And when people are what I see as lazy, or if they just don't, I don't want to say lazy because it's such a negative thing, and I don't mean it that way. I don't know what other word to use. They're just like not self-initiating is really, I guess, what I mean. That is a huge problem for me. Like I really have to breathe through that. Like, okay, they're not showing up. Okay, but I will do it, and that's the thing. I am not a sit back and wait kind of person. It's really hard for me to do that. I've had to learn to do that.
Right. Well, there, aside from the tri-type, there's another thing called the instincts, which I mentioned earlier. So there's actually 3 types of type 9 and 3 types of each type. So if you're the self-preservation instinct, well, the instincts are the self-preservation, the social, and the sexual.
Okay.
So that can affect that, because I think the sexual 9 is a bit more self-motivated than the self-pres 9. In a way, they can all be kind of motivated, but they're all kind of lazy. They all have this thing where they don't want to be stagnant, but they are at risk of being stagnant. Some 9s will become lazy and be more and fall into stagnation, whereas other 9s will immediately go against stagnation just to avoid it. It's like they're afraid of stagnation, and they do things just to avoid stagnation.
That's the one.
Yeah,
that's for sure. Absolutely. That's for sure. Because I know that. I mean, one of the things that I learned in something else was that oftentimes our the biggest the things that are most important to us are oftentimes the things that we're most likely to be or do if we don't work against them. So like, look at one of the most dominant aspects of your personality, and then, oh, hi, okay, that's the 3rd spider at my computer. Why today? What is this? It's a big one. Okay. Okay, it's not going on me. That's fine. I don't mind spiders as long as they don't touch me. That's a big one. Sorry. Yeah, so I could see that, okay, so this is a sublimated self-concern, I guess. Like, I'm really, to me, the worst thing to be would be lazy.
Yeah.
There's another thought, too, about that with 9s, because I have a daughter that's a 9. And the thought about laziness, it's not that you're lazy as far as what you do. It's the sloth part of 9 is about understanding yourself and looking within. It's not necessarily, because actually, like, social 9s can be very, very active, busy people that are running, doing all the time. And, like, they never, want to sit or have free time. So if you think about the lazy part that you hear about 9 or the sloth, it's not necessarily what most people view as laziness. It's being asleep to yourself and understanding yourself and maybe expressing your opinions or seeing who you are. So it's not necessarily a physical laziness.
Yeah, it can be physical laziness, but
I don't know if that helps.
It can be with the self-pres 9. The self-preservation 9 can be very hard working, but they'll schedule times for rest that they do want to go to. Like my dad, for example, is a self-pres 9. He likes to be in bed at a very particular time of the day, and he gets a bit annoyed if he can't be in bed at that time. They get up at a certain time, but he would go to his job and he'd do his job and so on, and he'd go. And he'd do it as hard as anyone else. Yes, my dad is an ISTJ, Ben. Whereas that's physical laziness is one element of it, but it is also like spiritual laziness and psychological laziness. These are all different things. This is a kind of simplistic example of the instincts.
Yeah, I think I'm really, really bad at the self-preservation one. Like, really not good at that.
Yeah. Well, the way it works is we have all 3 instincts. The first one is more what we want or what we're kind of neurotically focused on. The second is what we're least bad at. It could be what you're good at or be what you're least bad at. The third's kind of your blind spot / hidden agenda. It's more the thing that you'll worry about later that may creep into your life once you've got the other 2 sorted, or if they're not being sorted. But your first one is what you're more focused on the most.
So that would, for me, definitely be SXSO.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
Imogen, I'm just trying to think of various things like what works. What about visual stuff like this? Because Catherine Farber's got a lot of visual representations. of the types?
Yes and no. That's a lot for me to take in at once. Like
Right.
Collages are really hard.
It also, how can I put this? A bit 90s, because I think that's when they were done.
Yeah.
But apparently the people actually chose these images themselves. Is that right, Jonathan? Was that the process?
Yes. Yes.
I have a hard time with conflict around me, but it's not hard if I'm in it. But like two people fighting near me, like having an argument or a disagreement that is becoming aggressive, that really bothers me. Like for me, it's almost like, I don't care what will stop this, but stop. I want to do whatever is necessary to end that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Not that I do, but that's that's what I want to do.
No, yeah. I should say that the instincts are technically they are their own separate thing. It's just that they combine with each Enneagram type to create a different subtype or different variant.
Yeah,
so there'll be a process to understand your instincts. But
I mean, Catherine is insistent about calling them the subtypes. Mm-hmm. I'll call them instinctual variants. I go, partly is because that's what it's like the first thing that I learn. I don't want to give it up, and I'm going to stick with it. And so they called it, and you gave the example of, well, it's an independent variable. It can exist as its own system. Uh-huh. And recently, Jonathan and I did hangouts where it existed in its own system, and so
it's like it emerged as part of the Enneagram system, and then it became its own. Well, people realized it could be its own thing and its own identity. So, yeah, it's a complicated talk. This is a lot to take in, I imagine. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. As far as your conflict avoidant thing, I wonder, when you see people in conflict near you, do you actually leave or do you just stay and endure? Or do you tend?
I would prefer to leave.
Uh-huh.
But I make myself stay.
Yeah, that's pretty common. That's what 9s do. 9s are what's called a withdrawn type. So 4, 5, and 9 are withdrawn types, but it's the 4 and the 5 that tend to physically leave. The 9 will stay and endure in order. Let's put it another way. As I said, type 4 is part of the heart center. Type 5 is part of the head center. Type 9 is part of the body center, the gut center. The withdrawn types withdraw into their center and away from the other two centers. So the 4 and the 5 withdraw from the body center, which means they physically withdraw. They leave, whereas the 9 withdraws into themselves and they shut down their emotions and their logic just to endure. So they're relying on their own inner strength. They're actually in some ways the strongest type, but it's often a very passive strength. It's like the strength of endurance, strength of stubbornness, strength to deal with things, like the strength of passive resistance. So they can get assertive if they're pushed far enough, or if they lose their temper, or whatever. But their standard modus operandi is to endure and put up with things.
So I have a question for Jonathan. and a question for Imogen. To Imogen, does this work for you, this table? Does this graphic work for you? Right. Jonathan, is it any good?
Oh yeah, they're all
it doesn't need to be perfect. The first filter is, does it work for Imogen? I'll just say something about ISFPs have the interaction style of behind the scenes, and what I've noticed is that I try to look at some functional reasons for the interaction styles, and there are some patterns there. So, for example, all of the NPs are informing rather than directive. And I think it's because they see a lot of options. They're not insistent about somebody else follow a particular one. The SFPs, even though they've got extroverted sensing and can be willful people, they have got the FI thing. And all of the FPs are informing. And I'm thinking, does that have to do with rapport? Because rapport is a big part of FI. And rapport is about getting people on the same level. And it's hard to be on the same level if you've got one person who's being the director and the other one who's being the directee. So is that a thing? Because so when you've got a sort of, so it's going to double up, I think. Like if you've got ISFP and an ISFP 9, you might be extra informing. But because the ISFP is like that cat, it's all nice and smooth, and then suddenly it bears its claws. That's how I see the ISFP. Accommodating to a point, and then you realise, oh.
Yeah.
That was for Jonathan, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a bit, I mean, you reacted positively. So it's just to say that the 9 seems accommodating, and so this can actually be tricky when trying to type people. Is when somebody's a 9, it makes them rather accommodating, and so you have to look more carefully for their interaction style. So for example, if you have an ISTP 9, it can be hard to see how they're directive. You have to look more carefully. So for somebody like Solobok, ISTP 9, or Fauer, ISTP 9, because of the strong 9 and the consideration for other people's feelings, it might make her seem more feeling based if she's more concerned about that. So maybe we have to sort of look more carefully to see if somebody is. It's just like when Jonathan said about the 9 INTJ, where they have the forced smile, where they're trying to do it, but they've not necessarily got skill in that area.
I never said that.
Well, who did say that about the forced smile in the 9?
I said that about the INTJ. I never said that about the INTJ 9. I said there are INTJs.
Oh, social instinct. That was it. Social instinct.
Yeah, some social instinct INTJs. Yeah.
Yeah, see, that's something else that can confuse the issue. It's like, are they 9-ish or is it social instincts? There's like lots of little motivational things to consider. But it at least, I think the good thing about it, Imogen, is that you'll have these possibilities in your mind, and then it gives you ideas of the sort of questions to ask to then get more towards the motivational truth. There was a thing I found. There was this table I made based on Jonathan's thingies, and now it's lost. It should be in there. Oh, there it is. So this might be of use to you. This goes through all the types, and it says what they're most likely to be in Jungian terms.
I'm not able to read that.
Okay, 9 there. I don't know if there's quite a bit of my NE in there.
Yeah. Another thing, she did say that Jordan Peterson might be a 9, so that'd be another one.
I could see that. You know, it's funny because I actually am very accommodating, but in my mind, I am judging harshly.
Yeah, that's what I got with Farah, where it was very interesting with like. So say you had that with an INTJ 9, then their FE break is going to be really on the inside. And so that would be an interesting character, like if you could hear their voice, a bit like Malcolm in the Middle, or you got an inner monologue, like FE break on the inside but not on the outside.
Yeah. Well, you can see FE break on Peterson with his he's not very expressive.
Do you type him as an INTJ, Jonathan? Because I do.
Yes, I think it's obvious. Although he identifies as an extrovert for what that's worth.
Yeah.
And Big 5.
I don't see him coming up with ideas quickly enough, and ENTP would be coming up with ideas as they talk. and
Right.
it would seem more novel. Whereas with him, it's like I've heard this before.
Yeah, he's the guy. What made his name in the psychology world was that he came up with his kind of unified theory of Jungian stuff and mythology stuff, and all these different psychological and philosophical systems. And he wrote a book about it that brought them all together. And that's, in a way, that's actually kind of nine-ish, bringing all these different systems together. Yeah, a lot of people type him as a type 1 because they see him as like lecturing people and stuff. But a lot of the stuff he's talking about is, as we mentioned, it's getting out of stagnation. It's like building all these rules for how to live your life and how to avoid it. Whereas type 1's more like, okay, yeah, I want all this self-development stuff, but for a purpose. I want it for a moral crusade purpose, which is not so much about him. He's more suspicious of that.
It's not really about him. It's about the fact that the culture is so messed up that what he's saying is just your basic common or garden, common sense, which a lot of SJs would say, the stuff he says, in terms of, and he was just fed up of seeing it in students. And what that tells you is that the standards are not high enough if those are the students that he's seeing.
Well, what's happening is a cultural shift sort of thing, but also one of the issues is we did discuss him in one of the classes and we showed the video of him, and the conclusion was that he did not seem to quite understand why why people were disagreeing with him, and people didn't understand where he was coming from because nines often don't properly explain themselves. So that was causing a lot of divide. Like, a lot of things were being projected onto him, but at the same time, he wasn't quite understanding. He was making a lot of good points, but he wasn't fully explaining himself, and that made him seem like a fascist in the eyes of the people who were disagreeing with him.
Well, they need to listen more closely.
Well, it wasn't just that. It was also because of there was a lot of stuff going on behind.
I remember being very confused by that myself because I watched one of his supposedly very controversial talks, and I thought, I don't understand why this is controversial at all.
Exactly. That's the thing. It's not.
Okay.
It's common sense. Most of the stuff we're talking about is common sense.
Well, that's the thing. It's controversial people who rebel against common sense because they think that common sense is like the common sense that they wouldn't call it common sense. They'd call it like old-fashioned ideas need to be rejected.
Yeah, but the thing, the root of the problem is that the high school. I mean, this is why I wanted Tamara to join, because you can talk about homeschooling a bit in future. Is that the high school system in the United States and Canada is not uniformly brilliant, shall we say? And so what that then means is people then go to university and they have to do all these catch-up subjects. And it's like, so in England, if you're doing biology at university, you have to have a biology A level, and when you do biology at university, you only do biology. There's none of this majoring stuff. That's the only thing. So what happens in the United States is that if you want a proper degree, you pretty much have to have a master's degree. So for instance, Jonathan, he did, was history the only thing you did in your degree, Jonathan?
Well, the university I went to did 4 years. Most universities in Scotland do 3 years. The one I went to did 4 years, at least at the time. And you chose 4 subjects at the start, and then you'd put it down to 2 in the second year. And then you had the option of doing a joint degree, which would be 2 subjects, or sticking with the one. So, yeah, I did history throughout, and I started history in high school. But
but what I'm saying is that the caliber of people that he's interacting with is not brilliantly high, is what it should be, and that's because of the high school system and the 5 months of holidays a year.
Well, he's not in America. You're right. He's in Canada.
Yeah, I know he's in Canada. Yes. But even the Canadian system, I mean, Imogen's homeschooling, so it can't be that brilliant.
Hey, what's that supposed to mean?
And so's Tamara.
No, he means,
Tamara wanted to
he's
stop.
saying that what Ben meant was.
Yeah, but I know why she's been homeschooling.
If the school system was better, you wouldn't be homeschooling.
Yeah.
No,
yeah,
actually.
Exactly. There wouldn't be a need if it was that good. And so from Tamsi is somebody who wanted to start her own school, but the regulations, she wanted to start her own school. So
I actually don't homeschool because the school system is terrible. That's not why.
What is it? Partly the reason? What was it? Just you wanted to?
Okay, so oh boy, so I did. I've been a lifelong learner. So when I finished, I mean, I've never not been learning. And one of the things that I started studying when I was pregnant with my first child, which is now over 17 years ago, is anthropology. And so I had to learn for myself because I didn't grow up in a family where anything was correct. It was very dysfunctional. And so I had to learn what is a family and what is everything. I just didn't know anything. And part of what I learned was how important it is that children have primary bonds. I learned all about bonding. I learned about sibling interaction. I learned about how when somebody is not civilized or forced into some kind of a funnel like we are in our society now, what are the interactions that happen between parent and child, and what is the root of that interaction, and what do people need? That's really it. And so by the time my first son was born, I already knew, okay, so I know what people need, and those needs cannot be met in a school. It's impossible, because it's a warehouse. It's where they, you stick a bunch of children in a box. They don't come from the same family. They don't have the same, as much as people love this whole globalization and multiculturalism stuff, the truth is you need to be with your people. And we are tribal. We just are. So my children, they need to know our history. They need to know our ancestry. They need to know, and not to view it as better than anything else. And that's the thing. It's not a supremacy issue. It's that they need to know where they came from. And my biggest thing was that school prevents you from knowing who you are. It prevents you from taking the path that is correct for you, because it puts everyone on the same track. And I'm totally against that. Also,
I love the quote from Mark Twain: "Never let your schooling get in the way of your education."
Yes, absolutely. The best schooling I ever had was college. I went for scientific and technical illustration. After I did glass blowing, and then I did that. And for me, that was the best thing ever, because it was the first time that I was learning something really that I considered, and that is actually very valuable, skills that I learned from somebody who actually does those things. Until then, first of all, school was incredibly boring for me all the way through. And it was just a waste of time. So now I have all these, it just was a complete waste. I mean, we did all this trivia. Who cares? I mean,
that's one of the number one things for diagnosing an artisan, is like seeing the relevance of what they're learning. Now, I just put this on there because it's funny. I don't know if you're into keto, but I know vegan stuff, but I just thought this was a funny slide. Okay, I will change the sky. I will change it.
I am absolutely
off my screen.
I am an obligate carnivore.
Right. So what have we got here? These is that a 9? That's a 9. These, I'm just trying to find the graphics that you might sort of like speak to you. There's a book out there that might work for you called The Enneagram Made Easy.
Oh, that might be very good.
Right.
I'm looking at my books here.
I'll just. Oh, there. I can put a little bit on screen.
Enneagram Made Easy?
Yeah, I think I've even sent you the PDF of it. Oh no, I've done something illegal. Right. Here's a bit from it. So there's some nice illustrations.
Discover the 9 types of people. Okay.
Right.
Oh no, where are you? Okay, there we
go. Did you find the PDF?
I was looking it up on Amazon.
What I'll do is I'll just send it to you anyway. Hey, there's a good one with the table. Let me see if I can find the table joke. I love one of these. I find hilarious. And it's the one which is the most meta. It's the one that's critiquing the drawing. I love that one.
Okay.
Not enough food groups represented here.
Huh. I don't know. That's interesting, because I oftentimes really relate very strongly to the 5. If there's just a small group, I'm okay. But that many people, I'd just be like, oh, good, they're talking. And I just sit there.
Well, that's kind of a poor representation of 5, because that's an introvert thing in general, I think. Like 5s are much more focused on knowledge and mastery and learning everything they can about whatever they're obsessing over, and being very interested in abstract theories and so on. Like it's very 5s are usually INTPs and INTJs.
Okay. I am that way when I'm learning something. It's obsessive. And that's what I do. And I do only that thing until I really have it. And then I incorporate it into all the other things. So I definitely put all the systems.
Yeah. Well, I did mention tri-types. So it could be that you're a 9-5 something, or maybe not. But that would be a possibility to explore in some future date.
Yeah.
Right,
Wow.
I'm gonna send some stuff over Facebook, Imogen. One of them is the PDF of, and because I'm doing something borderline non-legal, I will. Wait a minute, I need to show myself. There we go. This book, The Enneagram Made Easy.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, and it's actually, as well as it's easy, it does have nice little nuances in it. So it has. Even though it's written in 1994, it shows how people can. It doesn't get the arrows thing wrong. So, for example, the 5 is meant to move positively towards 8 and negatively towards 7, whereas this book will show the flip side of that, of how, say, a 5 can go to the positive side of 7 and the negative side of 8. So even though it's an old book, it has that. And so it has nice little nuances in there about how best to treat the person and other things like that. And I remember, what have we got? Typical thought. Let's do bits on the 9. Oh, I think you've seen. I'll put it in the chat. And oh yeah, a quick way to find all the chats that are started is just type in MC for messenger chat, because I thought it would work with numbers, but no. So, for instance, there you go for the Peacemaker.
Oh,
there we go. And I've got to get my finger out of the way. Oh, that even looks a little bit like you, Imogen.
Hey. But why the eating? Is they eating or feeding something? What is she doing?
Well, that's this is the Aragon Made Easy, so it's the simplistic version. Really,
Jonathan, you got to walk before she can run.
Really, they'd be talking about the self-preservation 9. That's what I'm saying. That's probably a better representation of the self-preservation 9 rather than 9s in general. Also, I think the 9 is associated with appetite, especially the self-pres 9. But
I'll put something on here. A note there. I'll put, when they are more aggressive, it's modelled as moving to E3 or E6, or as a strong win.
Well, yeah, that's another aspect of Enneagram, because each type is connected to 2 other types if you look at the diagram or the image. So that's kind of like paths for personal development and things you have inside you. So if an A is moving to 3, they can become more assertive and more focused on being successful and efficient and so on.
Okay.
Yeah, you see the NFs love a symbol. So they had this stuff and then they put it in a symbol because then they can like stare at it and it will awaken something within.
So when a 9 does that, they become more successful when they're healthy. If they go to the high side of 3, they're becoming more efficient and successful when they're getting things done. If they go to the low side of 3, they're becoming more narcissistic and self-interest and so on. So that would be... There's a health level model of Enneagram as well.
Oh, okay. So I'm actually trying to understand this. So is Enneagram specifically, is it like a growth tracker? What is it?
There's an element of that, yes. It's not just about growth, but that's an element of it. So, like a healthy type 9 is different from an average type 9 or a neurotic 9, which is different from a less healthy or psychotic 9, which a lot of that has to do with, like, you know, your environment or your upbringing and other aspects of your personality and so on.
So how do I learn all of this? Like, what do I do if I type in Enneagram on Google? I don't even know where to start.
The best thing to do is just do these hangouts, do these events with us, and listen to Jonathan. That's the best thing to do.
Aww. Thank you, Jonathan.
Shannon calls herself the Ennea Goddess on Instagram, and I'm calling Jonathan the Ennea Buff. How about that, Jonathan? Do you object?
She calls herself the Ennea Goddess. That's a bit...
I'm not casting aspersions. She's going to be watching this.
I'm judging you, Shannon. Yeah. So yeah, it's all about, like, to learn anything, to master anything, obviously you just need to research a lot and learn a lot and talk to the right people. So yeah, I mean, most people would like join groups and have maybe talk to a particular typing coach and do sessions with them. That's expensive usually, but that's how you would normally do it. Google's really just a starting point. It's not. You don't need to know the subject before you can make use of the stuff you find in Google, because it's quite simplistic.
So, Imogen, are you interested in sort of like levels of mental health and how people can get better or worse?
I'm very interested in that. Yeah.
Right. So, there's some nice graphics in Wisdom of the Enneagram, and I'm just going to show these.
Sweet. I think someone was at
where is it? Okay, that's a type 8. Where's the type 9 gone? Oh, there it is. Right, so if we have a look at this might... Jonathan's probably thinking, oh, no, it's too simplistic. Well, you know. So this might be a way of...
What are these levels? 1, 2. Okay.
Level 1 is almost like the Buddhist level, where you sort of liberate yourself from the trance of your type.
Okay.
I should. Sana is in the in the chat. I should have sent her the link. I'll should have sent her the link.
That's interesting.
Oh, that's not right. It cut it off. Oh, it's still got it there though. Right. Oh, what am I doing? I'll just invite, copy the clipboard. Yes, look, there you go. I'm being called out by Sana. You can come in now and give me a right old rollicking. Right, I'll add her to the chat as well. That's the Imogen one. Right. Right, so I don't. If this is effective for you, Imogen, I've got them for all 9 types.
Yeah.
Have you read level 4?
Yes.
Right, I'll then go up a bit to... Now, I think Jonathan once said that even the average ones start to get a bit, not exactly healthy. And unhealthy as psycho, or lock them up. And average...
Basically, this is somewhat poorly phrased. Average is not necessarily average. Like, level 4 or 5 is kind of average. Level 6 is not average. Level 6 is... You're getting into the realm of personality disorders. Rostos. And unhealthy sounds... I know it sounds like normal unhealthy, but it's actually really definitely personality disorders. But also, this is an old book, and this is not thinking about things like the instincts or whatever, so their type 9 is like all 9s when really it should be here's the level of self-pres 9, here's the levels for the social 9s, here's the levels of the section 9s. Never mind tri-type or anything.
You're expecting Imogen to go from here to the Jonathan level straight away.
But
building blocks, Jonathan, building blocks.
I understood what he's saying there, though.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense, because as I'm reading this, I can see, well, yeah, but it seems like it would depend a lot. I mean,
Uh-huh.
a lot of this stuff when I'm reading up to level. Okay, so I've read 7, 6, 5, and 4.
Oh, this is a snapshot from a book. Like the actual book has like 30 pages for each type.
Yeah,
so.
it's like it's almost like
So this
5
is just like
pages on each level.
This is like the appendix. This is like the back of the book or something. This is nothing.
Yeah, because they want people to buy the personality types, which has all the levels.
The problem is that even after all that, it still has its issues. But it's still, yeah. I know you don't. I know you don't remember the last. I know you don't remember the last video we did, but we did go over that book a bit.
But the reason why
it was a few years ago.
The reason why I think this might be effective is that it has a sort of an arc to it. Right, I've got to add Sana here because I've forgotten about the. Oh, where's it gone? I've got to get my mouse there. Add to stream. There we go.
Hello.
Hi.
I am going to be without camera.
Okay, fair enough. So what I was thinking about this, Imogen, how are you at remembering, say, a story about a person and a character arc?
Very good. That one works.
Right, because this could be seen as a character arc, where you could be positive, start with level 9 and go up, where it's like, and this is how they get better, and this might be a way. And then after you've learnt all that, Jonathan can say, well, this is how it's not brilliant. This is how it's not work. But it's like starting somewhere with like 9 character arcs in your head. Right, I think you were there on the average.
Yeah, I can see this is the thing. As I'm reading level 4 and when I was a kid. Now, I moved. You probably know a little bit about my life that I don't remember telling you, but I went to I think 15 different schools, and I just moved a lot. I've over 60 times.
Wow. So
when I'm reading this, and I'm in my forever home, forever and ever. I'm so excited about being here. But anyway, so. When I'm reading these 6, 5, and 4, I can see that is really a way that I coped when I was really young and changing schools all the time. And I definitely, not so much 6. I didn't do the resigned appeasing thing. I just never did that. Because I was really kind of the adult in my family. I had to do a lot of, I just saw this now. I had to do a lot of adult things very, very early in life. And so I never got to be that way. I could never just check out. But the anger suppression I could see for sure. And then 5 and 4, those are definitely childhood ways of dealing with things. Yeah. And I think I probably moved into level 3 when I was in my 20s.
Okay.
Just when I started to see I have agency. Because before that I didn't, I was just at the mercy of whatever my parents and everyone else was doing.
Yeah. So yeah, you can move through these different levels at different points of your life. It does depend on like what kind of life you had and what kind of childhood you had. You can also, if you're having a bad day, sometimes you'll move down for a bit, then you'll go back when your day gets better. So these are not.
Yeah.
There's a flexibility to all this.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I definitely spent a lot. I've had a very interesting. Are you starving?
I'm starving. Yes, I have not had dinner.
Oh no!
It's all right.
Need to eat.
It's all right.
I was just saying, Jonathan, you're welcome to grab a Twix and eat it on air.
I'm allergic to chocolate.
Are you really?
Yes,
grab a mango then.
A mango?
Oh.
I don't have a mango.
Grate a huge piece of watermelon, and that might be interesting for the viewers. Seeing you nosh on that.
I wonder if Jonathan doesn't know what he wants to eat.
I'll do that in future.
I bet Jonathan will eat what he wants to eat.
Yes.
Then why don't you put the food in a big balloon and you could like poke it and rip it open and then just smash it into your face and we would all think that's so fun.
Yeah, it'd be good for the viewers, yeah. That'd be a type interaction moment.
Imogen, you joke about that, but that is exactly the sort of thing I would do.
No, you serious?
Do not test my sense of humor.
Oh. So before my brain injury, I had a stone face. I did not express myself. You wouldn't have seen me laugh or anything. It was very much like just a wall.
Yeah, that's common with nines. They're very unflappable.
Yeah, not anymore. I'm very expressive. But underneath that, I always have it just I definitely have that inner peace all the time. Like anything can be happening on the surface, but it's always there. So like I'm never really worried about myself or about life or about anything. Like I know it'll be okay. But I can have like some really tumultuous thing going on and be switching my response and reaction to it in real time. But underneath, it's sort of like I'm two people. Like I know it's fine. Like a laughing Buddha. Like inside it's just ha ha ha. But on the outside I'm like
One thing we didn't talk about is the wings. So there's 9 types, but each type is obviously next to 2 different types. So the 9 is between the 8 and the 1, the 1 is between the 9 and the 2, and so on. So there's this concept called the wings, which is where you have a subtype that borrows from one type or the other. So some 9s will be 9 wing 1, others will be 9 wing 8. So the 9 wing 1 is a bit more moralistic, and
it's weird.
You kind of have both. You kind of do have both wings. Everyone has both, but
that's why
it's a preference thing.
I'll just say the 9 is the type that's hardest for me to understand because their wing is so different from their core type.
Well, I think Catherine says actually it's created from the types are created from tension between the 2 types. Make of that what you will. So the 9 is always like the tension, the compromise between the 8 and the 1 is one way to look at it. Although that kind of contradicts the 9 being the main type of which all types are variants. An example of a 9 wing 8 would be Clint Eastwood.
I think he gets typed as ISTP.
Yes, he plays 8s in some films. Like Dirty Harry is probably more of an 8, but the man himself is more of a 9 wing 8, kind of like an easygoing guy who can be kind of a badass and also kind of an asshole if you know about his romantic life. But that's another thing. Well, a specific girlfriend thing. I'm going off topic.
That's very helpful though. The 8 and 1, and then
Yeah, the 911 would be, well, Gandhi would say is someone who's typed as a 1, but I think is more of a 911. An
So,
extreme
Imogen,
example.
I've sent you a pack from WeTransfer. It's got all of the images in this folder. So it's all of the stuff that you can need at the moment, 61 images, and it's got all of those levels in it that we went through. We went through with the 9, all 9 types, all the icebergs, all the Nick Helbig graphics.
You sent that to me?
Yes, over Facebook, yes.
Thank you.
I packed it all into a WeTransfer file. There you go. Now it looks like, oh, Ben's just sent me one file. Oh, no. And not only that, is they retain all of the original file names.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. And that's on
right.
Facebook?
Yeah, I sent it to you over Facebook. It's just a link to a WeTransfer file. Yeah.
I feel like pressure that Jonathan needs to eat something.
Well, I mean, Janae can take over once Jonathan starts tucking in.
What I'll do is I'll put my dinner on now, but I'll stay on.
Okay, very good, Jonathan.
Put it in the cooker.
Okay, thank you.
Right there. So, Janae, are you there and able to talk?
Yeah, I've been listening.
Excellent. Well, if because Janae has also been taking lessons, so I'll put you as the number 2 Enneagram expert.
Oh, I don't know about that. I do know a lot about 9s though, because my daughter's a 9.
Right.
So that helps a little bit.
How did you find that out?
How did I find out my daughter was a 9?
Yeah.
I studied Enneagram a lot.
Okay.
And I read a lot of books. I've read probably 10 to 15 books about Enneagram. And I read a lot of articles online. And my daughter's 17 and a half. So she's, she's pretty established with her identity. And she was a very, very obvious 9 right from the start. And she even knew it. When she read about them, right away she identified with 9. But she's self-preservation 9. So I think they kind of come across a little bit more like what you read about 9s, about the like what Jonathan was saying about she works at Starbucks, and when she's at work, she's very, very focused. She's a really good employee. She's very good at practical things because she's also an ISTJ. But then when she comes home, she likes to have her scheduled comfort time where she can just be in like pajama type clothes and watch videos or do what she wants. She needs a good amount of that time. So that's more of like what I think you read about stereotypical 9. But then you said, do you feel like you're one-on-one first, sexual, and then social with your instinct?
Definitely.
Yeah, because that's going to come across and you're going to feel very different because of that than a self-preservation 9. But do you have any questions about things, like something specific that you want to know or you don't understand? Because that would give me like a starting point to help you figure it out.
I feel like I don't even know enough to ask a question. That's why I asked you how you learned, because I thought if I can just do that. But then I have the issue with my working memory being so poor that learning a completely new jargon and a new system by reading it it's not going to work. I have to learn it by listening. So
it can be kind of overwhelming because the Enneagram has a lot of different elements to it. So like you're hearing about like instincts and then levels of health, and you hear about tri-type that you might have 3 numbers. That can be kind of confusing for people at first. Yeah. But do you feel like the 9, does that resonate with you?
I think it does. I think it does. I mean, I can really see though, when I'm looking at all the other types, and I've only just seen the graphics and just very little bits of things, I feel like I can find that part in me, and it's hard for me to know, okay, so which one is dominant? Because that's, I guess, what I'm trying to figure out. And really the whole point of it for me is very practical. Like I want to, I guess what I'm trying to do ultimately is to do the work that's required to work through and heal trauma that has come through me from, I really see this very clearly, that it's come through me from people before me, from my ancestry, and then also into my own life, which has been very traumatic. Because I don't want to give my children extra work, and I can see very clearly that if you don't do your work, it gets passed on to the next people to do the work, and my children have their own lives to deal with. So this is, and they're doing great. Like, they're really healthy people. But that's really what I think is my job, is to make sure I deal with all this stuff so I don't pass it on to them.
Yeah, and Enneagram's really good for that, because I used it. I was doing recovery from things in my childhood as well, when I got really into all the personality theory. And part of what it helped me do was separate unhealthy behaviors that you saw growing up from healthy behaviors, and kind of understand why some people do it this way and then other people do it this way. And that some of that's not necessarily unhealthy. It's that they're different Enneagram types. So for them, it's healthy, but for you, it might not be.
Yeah.
So it is very good for that. And that's a lot of the reason I got into it too. So I can understand why you would find it really helpful if you continue to get into it, because it can help you also separate false beliefs that you might have, parts of your personality that you might not really feel like belong to you. Somebody else put them on you. And 9 especially can really deal with that. But anybody who's gone through trauma deals with that too. So
yeah,
it will help you do those things. And I think it's helpful if you have kids, because you can kind of, it's really important if you've been through stuff that you raise your kids and it doesn't touch them.
Yeah.
I relate to that a lot. And it helps you see what's healthy for each child is different.
Yeah.
And it helps me a lot, because I have a son that's a 6 and I have a daughter that's a 9. So they're very, very different people. My son's an INFP, my daughter's an ISTJ. Very different people.
Yeah.
So it is helpful for that too. If you end up learning it, you can kind of see with your kids what their types are and how you interact with them as well. So that's helpful.
Yeah.
Too.
And I think what I was hoping, and see, this is why I was asking, what is it? Because I learned, I saw very early on, my first 2 children, I mean, I know their types now. My first is an INFP, and my second is an ESFP. So when they were toddlers, I have 5 children. So when they were toddlers, like, it was obvious immediately, these are very different people, and they're 14 months apart. So I got to see them both in very close stages, and how they learned and how they dealt with things, and the conflicts that they were having. And I started realizing that was another thing. I just kept looking more and more into anthropology, because I was trying to figure out, they need very different things. How can I meet their needs? Because they're just totally opposite in a lot of significant ways. Not every way, but in some significant ways they are. And so go ahead.
I was just wondering, Imogen, it'd be an interesting example for people. How did you go about teaching your ESFP son?
How do I teach them?
Yeah, him, the ESFP.
He is a kinesthetic learner. He really needs to be in the body, and he needs to do things. And part of what he really needs is to be assured that nothing bad is going to happen. Cool. So he'll get in his mind that, well, because I'll say, well, you have to just learn it. Because he'll say, well, I don't know how to do this, and I'll say, well, just start. Because for him, I know that's what he needs to do, but he has to go through this, like the inner mulling of all the things that could go wrong. I could cut off my finger, my wrist could get sprained, and it's all very body oriented. And so I assure him, and then he goes for it, and then he learns it, and then he knows it.
Okay, he's a 6. He's a type 6.
Wow.
All of that, every single thing you said there was 6. So ESFPs are usually, they're often 7, but they're often 6 or sometimes 2. Maybe sometimes they as well, but usually 6 and 7 are the most common types. So all that stuff about worrying about what's wrong and so on. And
it's so opposite the way, like, he's so joyful and so interested in fun. If it's not fun, he doesn't want to do it.
Yeah, That's what I was saying about the wings. So
Yeah.
like the 6 and the 7 are next to each other. So a 6 wing 7 is a more 7-ish 6, more, especially if they're ESFP, more looking for fun and stuff.
Aww.
But if he's looking for what goes wrong and what might happen and the consequences, that's much more 6.
I know.
And if he needs needing you for guidance, or needing someone or something for guidance to basically know what they're supposed to think about things, that is absolutely 6.
Wow. Okay. Because we went for a walk the other night, and he said it was so funny. The first 20 minutes of the walk, he spent asking, "What if there are mosquitoes? I don't want to get mosquito bites at the marina. Can we skip the marina today?" And I said, "Honey, the wind is so strong today." Now he's 15, but the wind is so strong today. There's no way a mosquito is going to be able to land. You're okay. Well, but what if there is a mosquito? And my friend said, if he gets a mosquito bite, we're never going to hear the end of it. So I know. So, but then we got there and he realized, okay, we're totally fine. And then he wanted to look at all the boats, and he was playing with his dog, and he thought it was the best walk ever. And it was just so funny. Like, it's okay, see? So then now he jokes about the mosquito conversation.
Makes fun of his fears. That's another.
Yes, he totally does. Yeah, it was really cute. It's like, But okay, I can't have a conflict about this, because that's the thing. He kind of wants to fight about it. Like, he wants to make it into a almost like a devil's advocate thing. He wants to go to the extreme to see what happened. 6,000 mosquitoes.
The 6 is something that's called the devil's advocate, and they are always asking questions and challenging things. So.
Wow. Okay. Well, that was easy.
Yeah, super easy. I wish everyone was that easy.
Wow.
Yeah, I will say, if you're reading about type 6, some of it will sound a bit SG-ish, but that's more the flawed descriptions, so don't worry too much with that.
Imogen, you could actually give your son a lot of videos to us. We've recently done a hell of a lot of videos on the 6.
Oh, he'll love it. He loves learning this stuff. He loves it.
Oh, excellent, because we did comparing the 6 and the 4. We might have actually done 2 videos on that, because we did one with Blake. And then recently we did how the type 6 varies by Jungian type. So we actually talked quite a bit about the artisan 6s, because we had Shannon as an ISFP 6.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it should be quite close.
I did say earlier that type 6 is the most common type, so as a consequence of that, most type 6 probably the one we've done most videos on over the course of this channel. So many people we interviewed turned out to be 6 or identify with 6, so yeah, ton of stuff about 6. But it's the most common, but it's also the most varied, because it adapts so much to their own particular environments.
It's so interesting, because he is very independent, but at the same time, he'll say, well, my children call me mommy, which is so cute, because they say, "Can we call you mom?" And I said, "Of course, you can call me mom." And then they said, "Okay, thank you, mommy." So they still call me mommy. So I said, so mommy, what do you think about this? And then I'll say, "Well, honey, what do you think about it?" And that's like the worst thing ever, because then he says, "Well, you said this one time, and so I thought this about it, and you said this other thing one time, and so is it like that?"
Yeah, what 6 is doing is tracking inconsistencies. They want people to be consistent and so on. So yeah, anytime, even if it's a totally natural and normal inconsistency, they'll pick up on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they have to learn that that's a normal thing for people to do. It might frustrate them, because they're looking for pointers for what they're supposed to think about certain things and so on, but
so what I do is I'll just tell them, well, this is what I think about it, but you don't have to agree with me. Yeah,
that's kind of 6 and 9 is kind of a odd little combination. They complement each other a lot, but at the same time, 6 can get frustrated with 9, because 9 is not the person to tell them what they're.
Yeah, Like, just tell me what to do. I don't know it. Just do what you want to do. I don't know what I want to do.
It's because they're, in a way, the 9 is also looking for cues, and the 9 is also focusing on other people's behavior and looking for how to go along with or whatever in their own.
Yeah.
But not in the same way as the 6, obviously. You'll notice 6 is more doing it because of anxiety.
Yes. Yeah, it seems so opposite to me. Like, how can you be such a calm, easygoing person, but then have these like sudden flare-ups of extreme anxiety about this really, what seems to me like a small thing that's going to be done in 2 minutes?
Well,
but for him, like...
Well, the 6 is, in a way, always anxious. It's just that certain things will make them more anxious, certainly less.
Yeah.
That's why they're looking for consistency. Consistency will make things predictable, and then that'll make them less anxious. Whereas inconsistency, even if it's consistency about something bad, at least it's consistent, at least it's predictable. If it's inconsistent, then good or bad is still less predictable and therefore more easier to be anxious about it.
He knows this about himself. He told me that. He told me that very thing. Aww.
Yeah.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
So before I go and have my dinner, what's your INFP like?
He's the oldest too, so he's a very quiet leader. So he will sit and he'll watch and see what's going on, and everyone is attuned to him. As soon as he speaks, everyone hears what he said, even though he has a very, very low voice and very quiet. It's like he doesn't say something unless it is really important, and so when he speaks, everyone listens. Adults too. He can be in the room and people are much older than him. If he says something, everybody just looks right away and takes in what he's saying. He's very quiet though, and he spends most of his time. I made him a big cushion that holds the arms. It's like a shirt, and it's a pillow shirt, and he lays against it and he reads constantly. He reads and writes all the time.
I was just thinking there's a little tip for people. If you know somebody who talks a lot, if you just sort of like hint to them that, if you say to them, that person there, he hardly talks, so I really listen to him. Just like program them to think, oh, if I talk less, they'll listen to me more.
I just realized this though. This is something I realized just in the last year. Mostly because other people were talking to me about it and said, your oldest son, I thought that he just was really, really quiet, but it turns out he's actually leading from that very quiet place.
Is he actually trying to be a leader, or is it just that people treat him as a leader?
Yeah.
So
he's the second.
Yeah, okay.
He doesn't want to do it. He wants people to do what they're going to do, and he mostly wants to stay out of it.
He might be like you, actually. He might be a 9.
I think he is.
Yeah.
Because we really do relate on a lot of things. Like, sometimes things are happening, we just look at each other knowingly, like, just let them work it out.
Yeah. 9s are actually quite commonly leaders in terms of they're good at managing different points of view and bringing people together and finding diplomatic solutions and so on. Yeah. They're a lot of presidents are either 6s or 9s, so that happens.
Yeah, he's very very accommodating. He's so accommodating actually that I've been working with him in the last few years about making sure that he lets us know what he needs. Because he won't. Like, well, what do you need, honey? Are you hungry? Do you need some water? Are you because he will just disappear. Like, I've joked that sometimes I have to go into his room and look under his blanket to make sure he's still home. Like, where is he? I haven't heard from him in a long time. But he's very light. Like, he's not brooding in any way. He's a really light-hearted. He laughs easily, and he's very easygoing generally. But he has his values. Don't cross those, because and if you do, he'll just walk away. He won't even necessarily tell you. He'll just leave.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. He's just so sweet, though, like really sweet. All my children are actually, they all have a really gentle heart. I think they're all artistic, creative kind of people. Another reason that I realized homeschooling was super important, because they're not employee material. Like they're all kind of, they're the kind of person who's not going to be very good with the whole machine, you know, like they have their own ideas and they're all working on their own projects all the time and having their own creative ideas about how things can be.
How have you been, Imogen, about, because over the last few years, learning this stuff so that you can then teach your children? How have you managed to do that, learn new stuff since your TBI?
That has been, in some very interesting ways, a huge benefit to teaching them, because before the brain injury, I really struggled with, and that's partly why I started looking into cognitive functions, because I wanted to see, like I could see that they each would take what I was doing and then they would learn it in their own way. So whatever I showed them or told them or whatever we were doing, they would each go off by themselves or just wherever they were, and they would reteach themselves with their own methods. And that's what let me know, wait a second, oh, we all learn in completely different ways. We even approach it from a different angle. And I could tell from the questions, like, well, because at first it was, well, wait a second, my children are all pretty close in age. So, like my oldest is 16 and my youngest is 9. And I have 5 of them. So they're all kind of smashed together. And I noticed that. And so that's, with this, at this point in my children's growth, they really just learn like adults. I mean, when they want to know something, they go about it the same way. They find books, they watch videos, they try it out, they get the supplies if they're learning something practical. They learn how to do it by doing it, by watching tutorials or taking, sometimes we'll have little classes. It's a really small town. So sometimes somebody will teach a workshop or something. We can learn from that. But there's no, the need for that block structure during the day, that sort of came to its own natural end. They don't do that anymore. So when we're learning something like this, it's just the same way that I do. Or, well, not the same way, but I mean, like, they go about it in their own natural, very mature way. They want to learn something, so they learn it. It's not like we don't do school at home. There's no classroom. I don't hand out textbooks or worksheets or anything. They're more like, I don't know about now university, but when I was university age, it's more like that. Like we watch a lot of lectures, and sometimes we do university courses. Like we'll do one of the MIT or Harvard courses that are online, and we'll just go through it. Like we did Robert Sapolsky's Human Behavioral Psychology. It was really interesting. Is it Human Behavioral Psychology? Was it Behavioral Psychology? I think it was. I don't know. We did this last year. And it was very interesting because it incorporates basically everything. It's like chemistry, biology, psychology. It's just everything all together. So that's what we do. We just figure out what we need to learn it. And they learn differently. My ISTP son, he just gets like the framework and then he disappears. He doesn't even stay with us to have the conversation. He's not interested in that. He's like, he knows what he needs to know about it. He leaves and then just processes it by himself. And then he comes back and tells us how all the systems work together and how this doesn't work and that does work and where the inconsistencies are. And then, yeah. I'm just trying to think of how, I don't know how to describe it other than like they learn how you do, Ben. Like you just want to learn something, so you learn it in your own way. I don't know if that answered your question. I'm rambling now.
Yeah, so, because you're saying that your issue with Enneagram is because it's completely new.
Yes.
And so that's what I was thinking. Is it because most of the stuff you teach to your children is it builds on stuff that you've already taught, existing knowledge, whereas a new subject would be tricky. I've got a subject that you could teach to your children, but again, it's one of these ones you'd have to learn NLP.
Oh, you know what? We do look at that. That is part of our, yeah, we do.
You see, folks. If you had the Imogen Tamsey school, that would be a fantastic school in Canada.
Yeah, but you can't do that. She probably told you that already.
Yeah, you can't. You can't. Because the government is control freaks.
Yeah, it's very much in any state here. But on the other hand, as long as I stay out of everything and nobody bothers me.
Really, it's about the union. It's about the teachers' union.
Oh.
Because if people could set up their schools more easily, there would be more competition. Now, really, what somebody should do is say to them, okay, you believe in antitrust laws. I'm going to bring an antitrust case against you because you're the only teachers' union.
Oh.
And that's an abuse of power. Where's the competition between different unions? Anyway, I might lose subscribers by saying such things. I should stop talking about it.
The teachers' unions here are probably the strongest. Like, the auto workers might compete, but teachers' unions in Canada are. Whew,
that's the problem.
Good luck.
It's like it's. Oh well, I mean, there's some. People becoming teachers for the wrong reasons, like becoming a teacher for the holidays, rather than pay them well. Then
well, teachers are paid very well here, so I don't know.
Wait, but I think Peter Schiff said, I should have put it like this. He said, on average, teachers are paid too much in the US, and the very good teachers are not paid enough.
Here, they're all paid the same, whether they're good teachers or not. So
that's a problem.
Yeah.
Because here's the weird thing, though. Anyway, so Janae, you have a fountain of Enneagram knowledge, and I just want to check something out because I want to know if this is a thing, because that memory book, is a little bit skeptical about this photographic memory thing. So, Imogen, what was the process? What was it like for you when you had your photographic memory?
I could look at this is the example I use because I used it all the time when I was in school. I would just look at the pages in my textbook, like really just look at them, just top to bottom, just look, make note of any colorations or anything specific on the page. Then I'd flip to the next page and just do this. And then when it came to exam time, I would recognize the subject matter of the questions, and then I would just find that page in my mind, and then I would read it. And then I would just write down the answer to my questions on my exams. And I didn't learn it, and I knew I wasn't learning it, but I also knew that I didn't care. So it was like I didn't need to know this, and I didn't care about it, but I knew I had to do well on the exam.
And now I think, before people get jealous out there, I think you're saying you no longer have that ability.
No, I don't. Definitely not, sadly. So it's so hard to learn things now, actually. It's really hard.
So, Janae, did you have something similar? Because I think you said you had a bit of a photographic memory.
I have what's considered a semi-photographic memory. So I couldn't just look at a page and make a picture of it in my mind. But as I read, especially, I comprehend really well as I read. Like, when I read words, I don't even read the word and take note of the word. I get the idea and concept instantly as I read. So my comprehension was really good. And I could, like, I remember in biology class, we do like a trivia day where you were in teams, and my teacher would give me bonus points if I could tell him what side of the page it was on the textbook. And I can. I don't know the whole page. I can't just look at it and have the whole thing as a photograph, but I do remember a lot of it, if not most of it, when I read. And I still remember things from, like, my Spanish class. I would study my vocabulary 5 minutes before the test. And I remember it all, and I'd get, 100% on it. And then I still remember that years later. I can still see some of the vocabulary pages with the pictures. I can still see them in my mind, but it's not a full, total recall of it like a photograph. It's just, it's semi-photograph.
That's interesting.
But it did help me a lot in school.
Yeah, it's very helpful. But it's part of what made me not trust schooling at all. Because I realized I can get top grades and totally not care at all about the subject. But I had to take the course.
You can totally forget it. You can, like, memorize it quickly, and then decide I don't need that in my brain anymore. Because I had kids that thought I studied all the time because I was a straight A student, and I would try to explain to them, no, I do not. I actually study 5 minutes before the test sometimes. But then you don't retain it in your long-term memory, so it's really a benefit. If you don't comprehend it and you don't retain it in your long-term memory and you don't connect it to other things to build on, then really it's just a little game you're playing, and it's not really benefiting.
So Imogen, what was your... So were you able to move it into long-term memory, or did it go? When you did the photographic memory, how long before the photographs faded?
I think it depended, because some things, it really did depend on whether or not it mattered to me.
Right.
So if I cared about it, like I still have, if I look at photographs or at diagrams now, I can remember the diagrams. But if I try to read a book, it's so sad. I will sometimes have to, if I'm interrupted especially, I will sometimes read the same sentence over and over and over and over again, because I don't realize that my tracking is bad too, so that doesn't help, because I sometimes read the same sentence and I think it's a new sentence, and then I get to a certain point and realize, wait, I just read this. It's kind of, it's exhausting actually to read now. I still do it, but it's really hard work. But before, the stuff that didn't matter, I guess I would just forget it. I don't know. But the things that did, like my biology diagrams, I still have biology diagrams from high school in my long-term memory.
Right. So this is from Improving Your Memory for Dummies.
And I started remembering names after my brain injury. I was never good with names before that. But because when I was in the hospital, it was really important that because I couldn't recognize my own face, and I had a hard time, and that's coming back. Like I'm starting, I can tell that it's my face now, through repetition.
Imogen, I just remembered something about your. Do you still have no televisions in your house?
Yes, but I don't know how fair it is to say that.
Yeah, I think
I have a computer.
Right, but I think that's a massive thing. If you're homeschooling children and there's no television, then yes, they're going to do better. I mean, there's fewer distractions. Yeah,
I have a very non-distracting home. It's really just for accommodating myself. I had to learn to self-accommodate for the first time after my brain injury. And a lot of what my children endure is as a result of that. I mean, the other thing is that 4 of my 5 children are introverts. Right. And so it is a quiet place anyway. Go ahead.
This is a little bit random, but I found out something in this book. And when it said you can come up with a rhyme to remember a historical date. And he came up with the rhyme, in 1915, something terrible went unseen. Do you know what happened in 1915?
1915.
I'll ask anybody out there, what happened in 1915?
Can you give me a hint as to where? Because we study a lot of world history.
Somewhere in the Middle East.
Hold on, I gotta ask my INFP and ISTP because they remember dates and places really well.
2 countries involved in World War One. It was a thing. Well, it was the Armenian genocide, when the Turks killed 1 million Armenians. Anyway, then I thought, they put that in, and then I went back earlier in the book, and then he wrote "My Armenian Mother." I thought, that's why he put it in, because John B. Arden, right.
Yeah.
So like I said, that limit that stuck with me. So those kind of things. Now the book has so many different things, and most of it is on nutrition. You'll probably find some. Like the ginseng. One
Yeah.
thing you might have to watch with ginseng is it says that it's a stimulant.
Yeah.
So you might have problems getting asleep. I tend to just
No.
take it in the morning.
I have narcolepsy, so I don't have a problem with stimulants just keeping me normal.
What about the ginkgo? Is it called ginkgo biloba?
I don't take ginkgo because I had brain bleeding,
Ah, right. Yes.
and yeah.
I'll just say that to folks. If you're on blood thinners, do not take the ginkgo.
Or if you have bleeding,
Yeah.
and I don't know how healed that is, and so I just haven't been messing with that. The thing to know about ginseng, though, is that ginseng is like a barrier, and it's very good preventative, but if you are already ill, if you have a virus, don't start taking ginseng because it will actually hold that virus longer. It'll keep it in your body longer.
So yeah, this gives you an idea what's in the book.
Yes, I read all of that, and I thought, well, that's... Yes, tricking yourself. Mnemonics, the mnemonic memory, that was something that I had to deal with somebody who was very preoccupied and did not listen to anything that I was saying. And then I would say, "Are you listening?" And then he would just repeat back to me the words I just said. And I'd say, "No, that's not listening. That's mnemonic memory.
Mm.
You're hearing those words now for the first time as you say them, but you were not listening." Ah!
Yeah, there's actually a good section in the cartoon book of NLP about listener. All right, it says it's not about NLP, but this is important. It's so important to pay attention, and it's so hard for me to do it.
Okay.
It's especially in Hangouts when there's other things going on, and then you've got things down the side. I've got that one now, the Cognitive Psychology for Dummies book. I forgot that perception I didn't put on there. There is some interesting stuff. I think you had a look at this. I'm not sure because there was a lot on the page. You might have thought too much NE when you saw this. This sort of my ideas.
You know, Ben, when I saw your because you sent me some of these and I was reading them and I was thinking the worst part about me ordering this book is that I don't have your notes.
Well, this one is the page with the most notes on it, so they're not all like this. This took ages because I was trying to work out why guardians have a good memory and tying it all together, and to sort of bash to sort of like make the socionics people listen.
So our guardians are SI users?
Yeah, they are the
Okay.
SI lead or SI auxiliary.
Right, okay.
And it all ties in and it all makes sense. From a whole type view, we know that guardians like to do the same thing again and again. And so it grooves it in. You get the overlearning thing.
Yeah.
So this book is not about easy methods to remember. It gives you the cold hard truth. It says, look, if you really want to remember it, overlearn it. But it gives loads of different things in there. It's not just one little trick.
Yeah. Oh, I know, and I've had to use so many different ways of accommodating. But I think I told you that I really think my hunch about this for myself, because I have damage, it's not just an issue of learning to focus. Or I focus very, very well because I have to. I mean, after my brain injury, I had to learn how to do everything. So that's pure focus. But the difficulty for me is retaining the information long enough to get it into my long-term memory. Yeah,
it's that, and it's the hippocampus.
Yeah.
And that's why he talks about some of the dietary things to make the hippocampus work well. So one of the things I've been thinking about quite a bit over the past year is the S-Janus is not just the SI thing. It's how the SI works with NE.
Yes.
So it's the association. So this bit here, the more dimensions and parts of the brain you can involve in a memory, the more easily you can remember it later. And then you've got David Kersey writing in Personology about guardians having associative speech. Going from it's not like with NPs where it's like with more abstract subjects. It's like, oh, this reminds me of this and this and this, so they ping So it's like they're doing the NE thing on a sensory level. They are finding these associations, and so that's pretty consistent. And so I'll put there, guardians have associative sensory-based speech, which is consistent with an aspect of subjective sensing. Guardians also, and then I've got stuff here besides SINE axis. SJ memory is an emergent property of the temperament as a whole. Subjective idiosyncratic tangible associations. So again, that's why it's subjective, because if they've got all these specialized memories, this reminds me of this, but that's nobody else is going to have that. If you put 10 SJs looking at the same thing, they're all going to have different memories of it. Whereas if you have 10 SE DOMs look at the same thing, there'll be less difference. It will be more the properties of the thing as it actually is. So what I'm doing here is I'm bringing together lots of different pieces of information to show the consistency between Kersey, Behrens, and Jung, how it works. And also the bits with the neuroscience as well. I found out something very interesting recently. I'm going to show you this. Something that was in this book. So, that's not the right thing. I need to... the wrong thing. I've lost myself. I need to click on this little thing here. So you see this here? You see that bit there? F8, place personal value, and something like hair tone of voice. When what it said in the memory book, he said that part of the brain, well, he said the right hemisphere has a lot of connections to the limbic system. Yeah. And the amygdala. And so that made me think, sensitivity in maybe INFPs, and then the emotions they feel, and that connection with that hair tone of voice, and then how that makes the person feel, the connections with the limbic system. Yeah. I try to remember this in my mind. I mentally go over this to remember the different parts. This, and this is all backed up in the book. I usually get two criticisms of Dario if they criticize him. One is, how do you know he's not making this stuff up? And then the other one is, but we already know this. Well, it's consistent then, isn't it? It's like, because these things come up. Like he said, like there's a fascinating area of the brain, region T5, attend to social feedback, because that's quite active in all the SJs. So here's a little wrinkle. ICJ and INTJ are both got weak FE, but ISTJ with more activity in region T5, they're going to be more attentive to social feedback. What is the appropriate thing to do? But what do we notice about ISTJs? Well, they tend to talk like this with a bit of a flat voice and not much emotional expressivity.
My brother is ISTJ. I think I told you that. He's ISTJ, and my children find him hilarious because there's no difference between when he's telling a joke and when he's not in his tone.
Yeah, that's the thing. So that is the thing there, folks. And I hear it. I listen to the Jane's videos, and it's like their voices. It's like this boring ISTJ middle manager kind of. It's like you used to get people in England, the old-fashioned nerds who would be into things like train spotting, and who had the voice like, oh yes, the Intercity 385, and it's like all the nerdy details. It's like the nerdy concrete version of a 5. And they have that flat tone of voice. Yeah.
That's funny. You know what, though? My father and my brother both had, their voices are so identical, and even their intonation is so identical that my mother and my brother's wife can't tell the difference.
That's, yeah. And you know what else? I like it when people do things. I like it when people are typed to do things. I like it when they do atypical things in a typical way. So, for example, your brother did an atypical thing, art, but in a typical way, in a guardian approach to it.
Yes, exactly. Yep. But, you know, we took a scientific and technical illustration, and so it is already set up in a way that works very well for him. And so when I was learning that, I actually was the one who had to learn it in the atypical way for myself, because I had to switch into that very methodical, step-by-step way that we were learning, which is like, for me, actually, I guess for both of us, we want to know what the end point is. Okay, what are we doing though? What's the end? And then be able to go through the steps to get there.
So we've got this bit here. How well the memory fits into what you already know.
Mm-hmm.
So now the downside of that, I do so. This is a big thing. This is a big thing, especially for SJs. The confirmation bias thing, and the confirmation bias is stuff fitting into your framework. So I put here SJs and MPs better at this. So it's like, if it fits into what they already know. The question then becomes, though, I think the NPs are more likely to reconfigure what they know than the SJs, because they've got weaker NE. And because I always think that the Guardian stuff is not just due to SI, it's due to Guardians love a generalization. If we say that a standard operating procedure is a generalization, this is how we should do it. Who creates the generalizations? NPs. In the general, it's like, oh, they'll make a connection between this. This is the pattern I see. And the pattern is the generalization. So you can see, and sometimes you can get SJs, and it's like, where did that wicked piece of humor come from? And it's like, you can get it with SI DOMs. You can have ISTJs, but they can be very funny people. It's like, what? And that's your suggestive NE there.
That's interesting too, because when I was like, I've been pregnant a lot of times, and I once was having a conversation with an INTP, and I was well, actually, he was just there. I was talking to someone else, but he was listening, and I was saying that, you know, I just loved being pregnant. I just love everything about being pregnant. It's just, I don't know, it was a really special thing for me, a really wonderful experience. And he just stopped our conversation, just right in the middle, and said, wait a second, you hated being pregnant. And I was just totally confused. Like, what? That's not true at all. I love it. And then he said, well, you felt terrible during your first pregnancy. You were sick and you were in pain a lot. And I said, that's true. And I loved being pregnant. But he had taken that and made his own, you know, view of what it feels, you know, what it must be like to be in pain and feel unwell. And then he just generalized all of my pregnancies. So then it must have been terrible the whole time. And you must not like any part of it. Like, no, actually, I loved it.
Because he puts stuff like that in, like, chapter 1, like the myths of memory and like how it is affected. Oh, and there's really good stuff in that early part about memories being dynamic and how the memory changes as you change.
Yes, it does.
As you look back on things differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, for instance, people usually say, I mean, there's a phrase there that across all media where looking back on it now, it's like the memory is changing. You got this dynamic. So folks, this is the bit that ties in with the Dario stuff, with the limbic system, with the and that's something we could ask. Yeah, go on. Yep.
Can I ask you a question about Enneagram about this? So when we're looking at these things and we're talking about the limbic system is obviously really, really important for just your responses and reaction to your environment and even your inner experiences. So when you're looking at Enneagram, do you find that there are hot spots in biology that that correlate with the Enneagram? Like the limbic system, for instance.
I remember seeing something with the hormones, but I didn't read it because, you know, not a 5. People can say it. But I've got it on now. I've got it in the Dropbox. I aspire to the 5-ness. I have it in the Dropbox because, like, INTP, I have it filed there. So I might have something there with hormones with but it wasn't really a deep study. Do you know anything about this? about the instincts and the limbic system?
I haven't read anything about correlations between that.
The reason I'm wondering is because as I told you, I'm reading a lot about complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and I've had just plain PTSD, worked through that, and I don't have those issues anymore, but I definitely have the complex type. And I noticed some very interesting things happen physically, like for instance, right now I'm talking to you, and every time I have to talk about myself, I'm getting like a danger feeling, like danger through my whole body. My whole body right now is like, stop talking, go disappear into a hole. But I know that that's not healthy, and so I don't do that. But that's how my body's reacting.
The only thing I could say with the Enneagram is based on whether you're a head type or a gut type or a heart type. Like, for instance, my gut type is last. I don't read, like when I have feelings, I don't read a physical sensation with the feeling much. Where like if you're a 9 is a gut type, you should be able to read your physical sensations and connect them to your feelings. Are you able to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh
Yeah, and it's like a natural language you already know, where for me it's like a foreign language that I keep trying to learn, and I'm just horrible at it. So that kind of factors in a little bit. That's about the only thing I can think of.
So if somebody says to me, like, what do you think about that? Most of the time I just say, well, I don't. I have no, I just don't.
But you can kind of figure out whether, like, when you get into it further, you'll hear about tri-type, where everybody has one type in the gut center, one in the heart, and one in the head. And you can kind of figure out what order they go in by, like, how easy is it for you to access your thoughts versus your feelings versus physical sensations more, and what they're telling you. It can kind of help you figure out what order your numbers go in that way.
So it helps you to recognize your whole being as, so it's sort of like learning how to read your whole being as an instrument.
Yeah, and it's helpful because you can use it for growth. Like, for instance, because I'm self-preservation last, I'm a gut type last, and I'm also an INFJ, I have a huge mind-body disconnect. And self-care, physical self-care is not my strength. So I use that for growth, and I started realizing that, the way my reality, what's going on in my mind, that's not how it is for other people. Other people don't live as a mind that's separate from the body, and I'm learning that it's important to connect all those things because we're very holistic, and your mental health affects your physical health and vice versa. So I'm learning that's a good use of the Enneagram as you see, what am I weakest in? What instinct am I weakest in? Am I a gut type last, a head type, a heart type? You can try to use that for self-growth. Like, I can give you another example. Like, as a 6, if I'm getting really anxious, like you said, your son, it seems like your son may be a 6. So let's say he's getting really anxious and he's stuck in his head and he's overanalyzing things. One way to pull yourself out of that is to use your other 2 centers. So like for me, I can try to use my heart center and go into my feelings, or I can do something physical like exercise or sports or something that would pull me into physical activity, and it'll stop my brain from overanalyzing and cycling. So you can use those other 2 centers to kind of pull yourself into balance when you need to. So I mean, those are some of the things I'm getting into now with the Enneagram. I've kind of gotten to the point where I know what the types are and how they work, and I can identify that pretty well with people. But there's a lot more layers to it as we go. And I think if you have a background with dysfunction or abuse or anything like that, it's very appealing to you because it's like you're teaching yourself things that your family couldn't teach you because they didn't understand it. So you may really enjoy that aspect of it as you get further into it. You can use it a lot more for self-growth than like MBTI. MBTI kind of helps you with your identity, I think. and seeing who you are. But I feel like Enneagram helps you with making changes, finding weak points, and kind of strengthening them.
Oh, that's what I need. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, and a Jungian type can help you with communication issues with people.
Yeah.
So Janae is getting into NLP, and so I'll put on the screen now. Wonderful new feature of this system. So INFJ is going to be through time, and so again, they not so much focus on the moment. It's through times how things can develop. So very much like the NI thing is very much through time. And that's two aspects of NI, two main aspects of NI. Yes, there's the symbolic stuff, but there's the time thing. And then there's also the focus on the inside and the unconscious. And so you were saying there, Janae, about being dissociated from your body.
Oh, yeah.
And not being associated into the moment. Pardon?
I forget I have a body most of the time.
Yeah,
Because
it's like a lot of INTPs will say that. It's like, oh, they get up and it's like, oh, this is this thing for carrying my brain around.
Yeah.
Well, it's like you get
like
researching or doing something and you kind of forget you need to eat.
Have you ever seen Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Krang, where it's like just the brain is moving that thing around. It's got these controllers.
That's funny.
HM's New Day. Did you read through? I think you read through all of these, Imogen. Did you read through all of these when I sent you the batch?
I did not. But I read this. I remember this.
There's 15 minutes left before I gotta go. I'll put the timer on.
That's perfect. I have to go too.
Right.
Yeah, I have to leave. That's yes, I definitely read this because I remember the expressive aphasia, and I have that, and it's so frustrating, especially when I'm talking to people like that I don't know well. Like while we're doing this hangout, I have a lot of mental stuttering.
It gives some advice for like if you can think of a Santa might be on camera. If you can think of she's logged in twice. If you can think of one's logged out. If you can think of a feature that you can sort of link it to an aspect of their body, or maybe if you can make a connection to somebody else who's more famous with that name, or just various routes, lots of different ways to try to get to the name. Sometimes,
not names though. I mean, like I have. This is like expressive aphasia would be.
Right. So Broca's area. Yeah.
Yes, that's damaged. Yeah, a lot of people consider it like word loss is usually how it's described, as just word loss. But I will lose not just words, and sometimes my brain will just substitute the wrong words. Like we have a joke, and we have a lot of jokes because of this. So one of them is I went to the washroom and I said, "Is anyone in the garbage?" Children just started laughing, and I said, "I mean the garbage," and then they're laughing harder, and I'm laughing like, "No, I mean, is there someone in the garbage?" Oh my God, the place where you and I couldn't, like, I had to describe what it was, and they're like, "The bathroom." Oh yes, is there anyone in there? And this happens to me all the time. Or the thing I can't even know. There's one that's really bad, and you use it with a broom. It goes on the floor, and you move things.
Dustpan?
Yes, the dustpan. There's so many of these all day. So my children have learned to. I have a friend here who has had like I think 6 concussions that. At the time, they were called concussions, but they should have been called brain injuries. He's an athlete.
Right.
And so one of the things that my children have found hilarious is the two of us they say that we speak the language of things. Because the two of us, we can talk about something, and we both use the word thing where a noun should go, and we do it over and over and over again, and we both know what the other one means without saying it. Right. And my children find this hilarious.
So my mother will say, "Ujima flip."
Thingy. we usually use thing, and then sometimes it just gets switched out completely for a totally different word that we don't even mean.
Yeah. Well, at least it's not replaced by a swear word.
Actually, for my friend, it is. He uses the F word. He's an ESTP, so he uses
there you go.
the F word nonstop.
So here's some stuff that again, this is an example of stuff fitting in with what we already know. So an example of like stuff fitting into region F7.
Where is F7? I have Daria's book. I just don't.
All right. So F7 is mirror others' behavior, mentally rehearse, infer by context. I'll click on
F7. Oh, that's where I was smacked. That is there. So F7, T3.
Yeah, I remember it as the. I have to sometimes remember which ones are on the left and which ones are on the right. So I remember that the odd numbers are on the left because I think of the odd left.
So I was hit on the left side, and of course, if you're hit on the left side, you're also hit on the right because you've got the coup contre coup thing happening. But yeah, so I was hit the hardest at F1, F7, T3, and then of course F3 and C3 were also smashed up pretty good.
So how are you at the mirroring others' behavior, mentally rehearse and infer by context?
So there was a picture of there was a meme somebody put up where they had a flashlight and a hose and a rainbow, and I looked at that and I thought, what are they doing to that rainbow? I was trying to figure this out. And of course, the whole meme is about, if there are not rainbows in your life, you make them yourself. All you have to do is get water and a flashlight. But it was like a metaphorical explanation, or not a metaphorical, inspiration for making your own rainbows. But the way that I see it so literally. And it's like 3 different translations before I get to the meaning of a thing, unless it's something that I already understand. So that image was just me seeing someone's flashing a flashlight at a rainbow and someone else is spraying the hose at it. Like, why are you doing that? Because there's no context. There's no context. So but there was. I just didn't know it. I had no way of understanding what the context was.
I was just thinking. I think you might find this interesting about this person, about the way they drew and how it affected different parts of the brain. Yeah, and I do think it should be called the motor sensory strip because it's the right way around in my head. If the motor's on the top and then it's the sensory, call it the motor sensory strip. So I will rename things in order to make it more sense to me. So how was your drawing being affected, Imogen?
I just started being able to. Okay, so. Do you remember I was telling you that it was sort of like when I drew, I wasn't able to see I had no mind's eye.
Yeah.
So when I was trying to draw, it was sort of like trying to draw the way that you would drive forward by using your rear view mirror.
Ah.
That's what it was like. I had to use what was on the page to determine where to go next, but I had to look underneath my hand, and so I didn't. I mean, I just have to go to bed. That was just exhausting, and I stopped. But just, I guess maybe, I'm looking over there because that's where I put it. Maybe about somewhere between 4 and 6 months ago, I did my first drawing where I knew where I wanted to go with my pen before I got there. And I'm still, it's just flashing, so I know it's coming online, like it's starting to work. My mind's eye is starting to come up. I can visualize, but it's so short. I used to be able to walk into a room and I could immediately superimpose the way that I would like it to be. So I could walk into this living room and know exactly where everything is going to be or where I want it to be, and I could picture it. Right on top of it, the way it actually is. And it's part of the way that I would dissociate from my environment when I was growing up. And so I could do that very well, but now it's just a glimpse. I'll get like it, and it almost seems like a light that's flashing on and off. It's like it's gone. And
I can do that, but it's not super sharp. How sharp is it for you in your mind? How sharp was it for you in your mind when you? Oh, is that a hard question to ask because you'd have to remember? What was it like in your mind? How sharp was it in your mind when you did this overlay, augmented reality kind of thing?
It was just it may as well have been real.
Ooh, I wish I had that.
Well, I don't have it now, but it was like that, so that I could, and that's how I would do my artwork was very easy to do, because then I could be painting and then I could see different things. I could put different things in different places, move them around, and then I would know beforehand what it would be like if I did it. But now it's not like that.
One of the things that's said about Nikola Tesla, I personally think ENTP preferences for him, but it was said that he was able to make an invention in his mind before he actually made it. Yeah.
And I still do that to a certain extent, but it's not as clear. And like I said, I really have to just go in pieces. So I'll know, okay, these two pieces, because I build a lot of stuff in my house. So these two things have to go together at right angles because they're going to fit like this. And then I will do that part, and then I have to take a moment and then visualize the next part. And then that's how I just go through it in this like stutter step way. Whereas before, I would just have the entire piece of furniture or whatever in my mind, and I would know exactly how to, bring it into existence.
I think this bit in the middle is fascinating about when you face having to relearn a skill. Do just as you did with your plant. Pinch off or resist doing the task the same old way, and your dendrites will branch out in search of other neurons for input in new solutions.
Yeah.
The more you think in novel ways, the more your brain will dendritically branch out.
Yeah. And this is for sure. That's how I'm functioning now. That's why I was saying before that my hunch about my memory is that I can't force it, of course, because it's damaged, but I can just wait for it to redevelop. So just redevelop it.
I think Dario said that artisans have the best working memory.
I did. I don't anymore.
and Jeff did this as a joke, and then he said he was listening to Dario said this, and he said he laughed when he said Guardians have the best long-term memory. Dario was saying Guardians have the best term memory, artisans have the best short-term memory, and the NJs have the biggest conviction about being right, but they're frequently wrong. Oh, and that made me think of something fascinating. I was reading something in an NLP book about the way memory works in certain people, and it was called visually constructed recall, and I was thinking about ENTJs in this bit, where they actually recall the memory, but it's a constructed memory. So it's not the actual memory, it's sort of like a construction of the memory. And I thought that was fascinating because that made me think, that could be consistent with ENTJs. ENTJs might be like that. Because it was about the eye accessing cues and asking, if you've asked them to remember what something looked like, why did their eyes move up there? And then when they asked the person further, they found out that they're actually constructing it rather than actually having the memory right there. So I'm wondering if ENTJs without SI break, do they remember in that way? So that's something which could be investigated. I know it's a bit complicated to explain. I'll just, what was it about? Here we go. Constructing images of the past. When you ask visual memory questions and a person looks up to their right, you cannot conclude that they are left-handed or that their accessing cues are reversed. All you can conclude is that they looked up and to their right. If you want to explore it further, there are a couple of possibilities. One is what's true for Susan, namely that she has reversed cerebral organization. The other possibility is that they could be constructing images of the past, as is true of Barbara. If that is so, the images will not have the color, the detail, the contextual markers, or the visual background that an actual eidetic remembered image has. That is an important difference. So I'm wondering, do ENTJs and ENFJs do that thing? So we could test them with their memories to see if it's constructed or whether it has that sort of eidetic quality to it. So for example, when Barbara recalls images, she recalls them outside of context, which is characteristic of constructed images. By the way, she will argue about the past with a lot of people, especially with someone who remembers identically. So, so there's lots of good stuff. So that's the thing with NLP. You got to learn it properly, because there is a lot of bump out there, because nobody has a proper certificate, because it's paying your pass. And so when it says NLP and Master Practitioner, you don't really know who the good ones are. Right. Some Fate's just put this question on screen. I've only got about a minute left, so I'm going to go through these things on screen. Riding your bike down memory lane. That's interesting. Oh yeah, the unconscious competence. This is a big thing in NLP. Like the idea that once you've learned how to ride a bike, it's hard to forget it.
Unless you get hit by a truck, then that changes things.
Yeah.
But actually, it's funny because I do remember how to ride a bike. I can't draw, but I can ride a bike. That's funny.
What's this? Oh yeah, unleash the whole chain of associations and rekindle much wider spectrum of memories. Guardian associative speech, I reckon.
So I think with memory, what I discovered was that, and it's still happening now to a lesser extent, but that it's almost like there are islands of memory, and that certain things are connected to each other. And I wonder how much this has to do with Enneagram too. That, like I think I told you this too, that I couldn't write after my brain issues. I couldn't write. And one day I was asking my son, I'm so glad that I taught them so many things, because they were able to teach me things that I didn't know how to do. So I didn't know how to stir food in a bowl. And so I had my son tell me what to do. Oh, you got to go.
If you finish your point, that's okay.
Yeah, I'll finish. So he showed me how to stir the food in the bowl. So I was stirring it. And as I stirred it, my handwriting and my dance came back. And what was weird for me at the moment was that I was aware that in the moments that I was stirring, I became aware that my handwriting had come back in. I wasn't writing, but I knew that it was there. And I also knew that my body's ability to dance had returned with the stirring in that bowl. And so then, of course, right away I said, oh, I think I can write. And I left the spoon, and I was like, and I went out and started. Well, I couldn't talk in my mind. That's what I was saying. And so I started being able to write on paper that way. And of course, I remembered how to dance.
Yeah, the kinesthetic stuff, because that might be a thing with limbic system. Although memories, if there's an emotional context to it. So, for instance, my grandmother had Alzheimer's, and it was like she forgot the house that she was in. But then I showed her a photograph of a granddad, her husband, and it was like that really brought her back into the present.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there is the thing about the Chinese G's, the Jinko, biloba, blood thinners. Be careful, folks, if you've got thin blood, or if you're taking blood thinners, because you could get brain bleeding. And then that's pretty much supplement. So, folks, I hope you're all out there. Buy the flipping book after this sample. So I'm perfectly happy with doing another one of these where we can lesson 2. This has been a bit random, but that's how it goes. It makes it more fun.
Well, what I'll do is I will read. I'll find some things. Now I have some of the things that we talked about today were really helpful to give me just an in, like just a door to start. And so I will read and learn something so that I have questions and I'm able to actually speak intelligently about it.
Right.
I think that would work better.
So folks, I'll remind people, my Lulu book, Wilma and Rena, is on Lulu. And if you want some NE, if you like a bit of meta, go for that book. And there's a little bit of FI in there as well, a lot of characterization where the characters are more real than the reality. Yes. And so I'm just going to stop the recording now, and then I'll talk for a little bit before I go. Bye-bye, folks. End broadcast. I don't know exactly. We'll find